After a crisis that leaves Earth damaged, a boy named Max gets taken to live in an orphanage. There, he meets a girl named Frey and falls in love with her, as they both then admire a special city in space called Elysium, which is only meant for the rich. Max promises to take Frey there one day. Many years later, Max leaves home for work and gets stopped by some robots who ask for what's in his bag. Max jokes about it, but the robots don't understand him, so they think he's disobeying their order. They then start beating him, and his arm gets broken in the process. After they finally check his bag, the robot soldiers don't find anything, so they eventually leave him. Max doesn't look happy about this, and he goes to the hospital to get his arm checked. While he's waiting, Frey finally arrives to attend to him. Max looks shocked to see her because she's been away since they were kids, but Frey says she had to leave so she could work towards becoming a nurse. She then asks if he's still jacking cars, but he says he now has a real job at a factory where he helps with making robot weapons for Elysium. She looks happy for him, but before he can say much, she hands him over to another nurse before leaving. After his treatment, Max meets Frey at the reception and asks her out to dinner, but she says she's busy. As he suggests going back to how things used to be, Frey says her life is now complicated. However, as he insists on having coffee with her, she agrees. Following this, Max leaves and heads to work. There, his supervisor sees his arm and tries to stop him from working, but Max begs him to change his mind. As he then enters the factory, he sees the company's director, John, while he's having a video meeting with some of the company's board members. Elsewhere, a man named Spider organizes the illegal transport of 3 ships to Elysium. As the ships enter Elysium airspace, the Defense Secretary Delacourt is informed of this. She then immediately calls on an agent on Earth named Kruger, who she asks to take down the ships. Kruger does as he's told, destroying 2 ships with people inside. The last ship manages to avoid getting hit by Kruger's missile and lands inside Elysium. However, Delacourt instructs the robot soldiers to arrest all the illegal immigrants and have them deported. The robots do as they're told, and they also attack a mother who came to use a special healing machine called the Medbay to fix her daughter's health problems. After the mission, Delacourt gets called by the president of Elysium, Patel, who complains about her brutal method of dealing with illegal immigrants. However, Delacourt says she's not ready to let people from Earth come over to destroy what has been built on Elysium. Patel doesn't seem to care about this, and he threatens to fire her if she keeps up with murdering people from Earth. He also instructs her to fire Kruger. Delacourt is not too happy about this, but she eventually fires Kruger, who doesn't look happy about his situation. Elsewhere, Max heads home and meets his friend Julio on the way. Julio has an idea for them to jack some car parts later in the day, but Max says he's no longer interested in doing things like that. The next day, he heads to work again, but while trying to close a machine door, he notices that it's stuck. While he's trying to fix it, his supervisor sees him and immediately instructs him to go inside the machine to remove the object obstructing the door. Max looks shocked because it's very dangerous, but his supervisor threatens to fire him if he doesn't do what he's told. Following this, Max goes inside, but as he manages to free up the obstruction, the door closes and the machine gets powered up. Just then, Max gets exposed to a blast of radiation that leaves him battling for his life before he is saved. While he's then being attended to by a robot, Max is told that the radiation has left him with just 5 more days to live. Max looks shocked, but the robot then gives him some painkillers to deal with the pain before he dies. Meanwhile, John notices that production has stopped, so he asks the supervisor for the problem. Even though he's told about Max's condition, John doesn't seem to care, and he tells the supervisor to get people to continue working again. After Max is discharged, he heads home alone in very poor condition. As he gets close to his neighborhood, Julio sees him and immediately runs to help. Julio then takes Max into his house, and there, his friend mentions that he has only 5 days left to live. He also says he needs to find Spider to get a ticket to Elysium so he can heal himself with the Medbay. Even though Julio says they don't have the money for a ticket, Max says he'll still speak to Spider first. Elsewhere, Frey is informed by a doctor at the hospital where she works that she needs to take her sick daughter home because there's nothing that can be done to save her. Frey doesn't want to do this, but there's nothing else she can do. Meanwhile, Max and Julio approach Spider to ask for a ticket. Max says he's ready to do anything, but Spider laughs at him. As Max then mentions that he needs to get to Elysium to heal himself, Spider agrees to help. However, he says that Max must do one last job for him. Julio doesn't like this, but Max says he'll do anything. Spider then gives Max a chip, which he'll use to extract information to help him steal billions from any Elysium billionaire on Earth. After Spider explains the process, he also offers to give Max an exosuit that will make him as strong as one of the robot soldiers on Elysium. Max immediately agrees to follow the plan, though he mentions that he wants his mark to be John. Meanwhile, John arrives on Elysium to meet Delacour, who has asked to see him. As they start talking, Delacour says Elysium is dying because of the kind of leaders it has. Since John's company is responsible for setting up all the systems in Elysium, she asks if he can schedule a reboot so there can be a new president. John says he can do that, but as he sounds unsure about the coup, Delacour says she'll give his company a multi-year contract that will bring in massive revenue for him. Following this, John agrees and heads back to Earth to start working on the reboot sequence. Meanwhile, Max gets the exosuit installed in his body, after which he heads out with Julio to join Spider's men to begin the mission. Coincidentally, John has just completed the reboot sequence and stored it in a chip connected to his brain. As he's then about to leave for Elysium, he texts Delacour to inform her that he's on his way. After a while, Max sees John leaving, so he shoots a ticking bomb on his ship. When a part of the ship then explodes to cause engine failure, Max and his team chase him down to where he'll crash. Meanwhile, Delacour gets information on what has just happened, so she calls Kruger and tells him to help save John. Kruger asks about the mission, but she says it's classified. As he gets angry and wonders why she wants a recently discharged agent to work on something classified, she insists that it's important. He then says he'll only work if he gets reinstated, and Delacour agrees. Following this, she sends 2 other agents, Crow and Drake, to help Kruger. Elsewhere, Max, Julio, and Spider's men finally catch up to John's ship. Before they get to him, he sends his robot companions to kill the criminals. Max manages to kill the robots, but during the gunfight, John gets hit. Before he dies, Max quickly gets one of Spider's men, Sandro, to initiate the transfer to the chip connected to his own brain. After a while, the data transfer gets completed, but Sandro notices that it's scrambled. Max tells him to do it again, but Sandro looks very scared because Kruger and his men have arrived. This leaves Max frustrated, but as he doesn't want to get killed, he and Julio decide to leave. As Kruger's ship is about to land, he kills Sandro and plants a bomb on Max and Julio's car so that they won't go anywhere. When he then lands and heads towards them, Max comes out and fights him. Unfortunately, Kruger stabs Max, but before he finishes him off, Julio shoots him to defend his friend. This gets Kruger angry, and as he attacks Julio, he kills him. Before he can do anything else, Max then shoots at him repeatedly, but he's able to block most of the bullets with a shield even though he gets hurt. Following this, Max tries to save Julio, but as he sees that his friend is dead, he runs away before he gets caught. Delacour then orders Kruger to ensure Max doesn't escape because he has stolen valuable data from John. After a while, Kruger and his men are unable to find Max because he is hidden under a truck, so they leave the area. Max then heads out and goes to the hospital. He falls at the entrance, and while he waits for help, he sees Frey just about to leave work with her daughter. Max immediately begs her to help him, so Frey takes him home with her daughter Matilda, who looks worried about Max. Elsewhere, Kruger's men find out the kind of data that was stolen, and as they tell their boss, he realizes that it's the key to taking control of Elysium. Since he now wants it too, he tells his men to send out drones to start looking for Max. In Elysium, Delacour also orders a no-fly zone in the whole area, and as Spider sees it, he realizes that whatever data Max retrieved from John must be very important. The next day, when Max wakes up, he thanks Frey for helping him and mentions that he had to do a job for Spider so he could leave for Elysium to get treated. As they're talking, Matilda walks in, and Max looks surprised as Frey says the girl is her daughter. Max then says sorry for coming to her because he could now put her and Matilda in danger. However, Frey tells Max to help her get Matilda to Elysium to cure her sickness. He says he can't do that because there are people after him, but Frey still begs him. Max doesn't listen, but as he's heading out, Matilda stops him and offers to help him bandage his injured arm. He then asks why she's doing it, and she says she doesn't want him to get sick. Max feels sorry for her, but he still leaves. As Max heads out though, one of Kruger's drones sees him. He then takes it down and runs away to find Spider. Meanwhile, Kruger and his men arrive at Frey's house to ask where Max went. She says she doesn't know, but this doesn't stop Kruger from hurting her. As he then sees how defensive she is of Matilda, Kruger tells his men to take them into the ship as his hostages. Elsewhere, Max meets Spider and says he needs to go to Elysium. However, Spider says it's impossible because the flight system has been jammed. He then mentions that there has to be something in Max's head that's worth a lot to the people in Elysium. After convincing Max to let him have a look, Spider sees that it's the reboot program for Elysium. He looks shocked and tells Max that the data can help everyone on Earth and make them citizens of Elysium. He adds that he can start working on something to get it done, but as Max asks how long it will take, Spider says 5 days. Since Max doesn't have much time, he realizes that he can bargain with the data in his head and use it to get to Elysium. Spider advises him against it, but he doesn't seem to care. As he's then about to leave, Spider hides a tracking device on his exosuit. After a while, Max finds the damaged drone and uses it to let Kruger and his men find him. As they then get to where he is, Max says he knows what's in his head and that he just needs to get to a med bay to heal himself. He also has a grenade with him, and he threatens to kill himself if he's not taken to Elysium. Kruger happily accepts to take him, but as he enters the ship, Max looks shocked to see Frey and Matilda. Following this, Kruger informs Delacourt that he's on his way back to Elysium, so she lifts the no-fly zone order. This then helps Spider to realize that Max is on his way to Elysium, so he tells his men to pack their weapons and get ready to go there too. Just as Kruger's ship is about to land, he and his men suddenly attack Max. The grenade drops from his hand, and after fighting to free himself, he pushes Kruger towards the bomb. As it then blows up, Kruger's face gets damaged, and the ship experiences a major failure that causes it to crash near someone's house. Delacourt sees this and immediately instructs her guards to apprehend everyone on the ship. After this, Max tells Frey to take Matilda inside the nearby house to use a med bay. When she then leaves, Drake fights with Max while Crow follows her. As Max still tries to fight his way out, he gets shocked with a taser until he passes out. Meanwhile, Frey finds a med bay and puts Matilda in it, but it doesn't work because she's not a citizen. Before she can do anything else, she also gets shocked with a taser until she passes out. When Max wakes up, he sees himself inside a lab, where he hears Delacourt speaking to a doctor who says the data is intact. As the doctor also mentions that Max will die if the data is extracted, she says she doesn't care. Before she heads out, she leaves orders for Frey and Matilda to be taken away. Meanwhile, Spider and his men land in Elysium and start looking for Max. Elsewhere, Crow keeps Frey and Matilda inside a locked room while he and Drake use a medbay to fix Kruger's face. After they get it done, Kruger wakes up and immediately asks for Max. While he's then slowly getting his strength back, Delacourt comes over to complain about how his ship crashed into Elysium. Kruger doesn't like this, so he stabs her and drops her inside the room where Frey and Matilda are being held. Frey then tries to save Delacourt, but she eventually dies. As Kruger then prepares to wear his suit, he tells Crow and Drake to flush everyone out of the building because he's planning to become the new president. After they do this, he starts his search for Max and tells Crow to kill Frey and Matilda. Back in the lab, Max frees himself before he's killed. He then leaves to find Frey. On his way, he sees the damaged screens in the control room and sees that Spider is already in Elysium. Max then manages to communicate with him to ask if he can truly make everyone citizens with the data in his head. After Spider confirms this, Max says he has a plan. Just as Crow then enters the locked room to kill Free, Max shows up and kills him. When Drake also starts shooting at him, Max kills him and proceeds to save Frey and Matilda. As Max then tells Frey to follow him, he says he has a plan that will help Matilda. Before they go too far, Kruger sees them, so Max tells Frey that they have to split up. He then tells her to go outside and find a nearby house with a med bay. Frey says it won't work because Matilda is not a citizen, but Max says it will work this time. After she leaves, Spider and his men enter the building and meet Max, who immediately tells one of the men to follow Frey and make sure she's safe. While Max, Spider, and the last guard are running away, Kruger sees them. He kills the last guard immediately, but before he can do anything else, Max slows him down by shooting at him. As he and Spider then escape, Max's radioactive disease starts to affect him, so Kruger eventually catches up. Just before Kruger can hurt him, Max stands up and fights. Even though Kruger initially gets the upper hand, Max eventually disconnects him from his suit and kills him. Just then, Max and Spider head to a nearby lab with facilities to initiate the data transfer. As Spider starts the process, he sees that Max will die if the data is extracted from him. He looks sad about this, but Max says he already knows. With Patel and some guards approaching them, Max tells Spider to hand him the device to complete the transfer. After collecting it, he contacts Frey and tells her that he won't be joining her outside. He also says he's happy to have fulfilled his childhood promise to bring her to Elysium. Frey realizes what he's about to do, and she looks really sad. Shortly after, Max taps the button to complete the transfer, after which he dies. Suddenly, the reboot process of Elysium goes through. Following this, Matilda is recognized as a citizen, and Frey uses the medbay to heal her. After she then wakes up, Frey looks very happy and hugs her. Meanwhile, Patel tells one of his robot guards to arrest Spider, but the robot says he can't arrest a citizen. Patel looks shocked by this, and Spider smiles as he says that Elysium now belongs to everyone. Just then, the medical system gets an alert of all the citizens on Earth who need medical attention. With this, a protocol to send aid shuttles to Earth to heal everyone is initiated. As the shuttles then arrive on Earth, the citizens look happy and relieved to finally get help.